Stephen A., you've been very outspoken on the subject. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm not sad. I'm relieved for the city of Los Angeles. I'm relieved for Los Angeles Rams fans everywhere, and I stand by that. I want to modify something. You know, in the tease leading into the show, I didn't know what Mike were going to ask me, and they asked me about about Jeff Fisher's firing, and I joked around a little bit about it, and then, you know, I caught myself because obviously the man's lost his job. There's nothing that's funny about it. So I need to show the proper respect and treat this with the seriousness that it deserves. And I will do so in saying exactly what I'm about to say as I'm looking in this camera. It is time. It has long been timed. Jeff Fisher should have been fired years ago. I don't regret a single damn word that I said, and I stand by it. Not the joking side, but the serious side. And let me take this a step further, just to remind everybody of what we're talking about here. We are talking about a man that has coached in the NFL for 22 years. We are talking about a man that has not won a playoff game since 2003. We are talking about a man that has not had a winning record in 7 years. We are talking about a man that has a resume that is so atrocious, it elevates the importance of the Rooney Rule because it illuminates and highlights even more so why there's such a problem when it comes to the issues of hiring as it pertains to minorities or anybody else. Jeff Fisher is so bad, white folks should complain about Jeff Fisher having a job. That's how bad it is, okay? Because there are white candidates. Forget all the stuff forget blacks, forget Hispanics, forget minorities, forget everybody. Let's talk about white America. White America should have a problem with the fact that Jeff Fisher kept his job for this long. And here is why. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask of you, in all seriousness, how in God's name are folks on the come up, regardless of what your ethnicity is supposed to get an opportunity when a man who has failed, who has missed the postseason in 16 seasons out of 22, how in God's name is somebody else supposed to get a chance when that man is allowed to keep his job? Would there have ever been a Mike Tomlin? Would there have ever been a Sean Payton? Would there have ever been a Jay Gruden? Would there have ever been a Mike McCarthy? When that level of ineptitude is continuously rewarded, it sends the message that we ain't talking about a meritocracy. We're talking nepotism. We're talking favoritism. We're talking all of the isms that we're supposed to abhor in this great country of ours because it's supposed to be the land of opportunity, not the land of who you know. And that's what land that Jeff Fisher was living in. Stan Kroenke allowed it for far too long. And the city of Los Angeles and pundits and commentators everywhere stood up with your boy and recognized that it was just flagrantly obvious that this is something that could not be allowed. He needed to go. It was the right decision. He should have been gone. And oh, by the way, I got others on the list too. They need to go as well. We'll be talking about them in a little while. I will not apologize for it. I will be sensitive to his family. But last time I checked, we only talking about Jeff Fisher's emotions here. Too many people don't get to lose their job and still walk away with $10 to $14 million. Coming to them after years of failure. But Jeff Fisher gets it like that. Forgive me if my sympathy isn't that great. I think he'll be fine. I really, really do.
You know, I'm surprised that more people haven't had a Barzini moment about this, Stephen A. Smith. Remember from The Godfather Part 1?
Yes.
Tattaglia could have never outfought Santino, but it wasn't until this day that I realized it was Barzini all along.
Yeah.
Everyone's pointing at Jeff Fisher. I think there's a good reason that goes beyond a good old boys network why he was kept around. You know, a fish rots from the head down. And the Rams, at this moment, are a bad franchise. And they've been a bad franchise for a while. You know, Les Snead and Jeff Fisher kind of came in as a pair, more or less. And what's Les Snead done as the GM? How are those drafts gone? How many top draft picks can you whiff on? Yeah, of course you can point to some that worked out. Every team has some that worked out. But they've missed on a lot. This has been a bad team for a long time. And as long as Jeff Fisher's around, Les Snead doesn't have to take the heat, right? because the coach is there. I think he probably wanted Jeff Fisher around as long as possible. And what about Stan Kroenke? Look at this. Here's some stats on the Rams franchise. No winning seasons since the first term of George W. Bush. Think about that for a second. 5-season stretch. They went 15-65. That is the worst in league history. 15-65. And these two, Snead and Fisher, were signed to extensions before the season began. So you can point to Jeff Fisher, but what about the guy above him, Les Snead? What about the guy above him, Stan Kroenke, who's a brilliant businessman, obviously, but that's a poorly run franchise. What other franchises does Stan Kroenke have a stake in? The Colorado Avalanche, the Denver Nuggets, and apparently the Arsenal Football Club in England. You know what they have in common? Not being run extremely well. None of them very good. None of them relevant. So what issue is it really? When I look at it, Jeff Fisher is Tattaglia, and Barzini is actually Stan Kroenke, or at least Les Snead. And I think in Fisher's absence now, we will see the focus shift to the next guy up on the ladder, which is Snead, and then after that, you got to look at the owner. Fish rots from the head down, and what we have here is a rotten fish.
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things, Max. Number one, he had Steve McNair rode those coattails to a Super Bowl appearance, coming within a yard and a half or so of capturing a Super Bowl title. And ever since then, he came across as somebody who was better than the players. I know he had a reputation as a player's coach, but I don't see how you could have a reputation as a player's coach if you are somebody that can't get the players to perform for you. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to point this out. Do you know, Max, that even on the way out the door, Jeff Fisher was actually done a favor? Because his loss last week tied him with Dan Reeves to being the losingest coach in the history of the NFL. Another loss this week against the Seattle Seahawks, which is surely coming, by the way. A loss to the Seattle Seahawks this week will have officially made Jeff Fisher the worst, most losingest coach in NFL history. Not to say that Dan Reeves is that way, because Dan Reeves went to a couple of Super Bowls, but you get where I'm coming from. My point to you is this. These are the kind of things that happen. And I think it's very important to point this out. My issue, I'm not up here trying to get people fired. My point is that if you are in a results-oriented business and you don't produce results, how many people get the opportunities you have? If we can't be
it's
fair.
Not personal.
Exactly. I don't know the man.
Well, actually, Stephen A., let me turn that around for you for a second.
Sure.
It's not that you're up there trying to get someone fired. It's that you're up there trying to get someone hired, a more deserving candidate. And when someone doesn't get fired, when it's not meritocratic, when it's inefficient that way, it denies opportunity to candidates who've earned it. And you brought up, well, white people should be for the Jeff Fisher firing. Yeah, I think, football fans want their team to win. Period. And if the coach is black or white, and unless you have real issues, those are things you got to work out yourself if you do.
Listen.
They don't care what color the coach is if the football team is winning. At least they should.
Listen, let me tell you something right now. I think Marvin Lewis should have been gone years ago, okay? It ain't about no damn ethnicity. It's about results. I think he should have been gone years ago. But it's pretty hard to make that argument when a man goes to 5 straight playoff appearances when you keep Jeff Fisher employed. And it's pretty hard for dudes on the come up who work their tails off, black, white, and otherwise, all throughout the NFL and throughout college sports. It's pretty hard for them to get an opportunity when you got individuals like Jeff Fisher who are allowed to keep their job. I'm sure there's some role he can play. I'm sure he's a smart football mind, and there's some kind of contribution that he can make. I'm not saying the man doesn't deserve a job. I'm saying he does not deserve to be a head coach in the National Football League. He has had his time. It has long been over, and thank God it's finally official.
We'll leave it there. Is it a waste of time to think anyone else is going to come out of the AFC other than New England?
I really do feel that way. I really do feel that way because I think with Brady, they're a well-oiled machine. And I think that the rest of the AFC, even though they can make it interesting, the team best suited to go up against them from a disciplined and focused perspective are the Kansas City Chiefs. But you're not going to get me to pick Alex Smith over Tom Brady, especially if they got to go to Foxborough to play. The only shot Kansas City has is if they somehow, some way maneuver themselves in position to get the top seed, and the road to the Super Bowl has to come through Arrowhead Stadium. If Tom Brady has to go to Arrowhead, that would be an entirely different challenge than Kansas City going to Foxborough. If Kansas City goes to Foxborough, as far as I'm concerned, they have no shot.
What
it
if
would
the
be a miracle.
Steelers got hot?
If the Steelers got hot, yeah, but again, that secondary up against Tom Brady, I don't like it.
Right.
I don't like it. Oakland, their defense, their secondary up against Tom Brady, I don't like it. Even though Khalil Mack getting to Tom Brady with Bruce Irvin and those boys, they can make it a bit interesting, but I'm not sold on them, particularly after I watched them perform against the Kansas City Chiefs this last week. And then, of course, don't get me started with anybody from the AFC South. I won't even consider it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's how we get to that conclusion. To me, the team with the best shot based on experience, based on not shrinking in the moment, would be the Steelers. The team best in terms of focus, preparation, discipline, and not beating themselves would be Kansas City. But Pittsburgh's secondary and Alex Smith in Kansas City, to me, eradicate the possibilities of those two teams, which is why I don't think there's really any sense in thinking that somebody's going to knock off New England unless New England loses the #1 seed and they have to go on the road. Mm-hmm. If they have to go through, if they get to stay in Foxborough, they're going back to the Super Bowl.
Max?
I picked New England to get back to the Super Bowl this year and face Seattle, who I thought would win the Super Bowl, and I'm still not moved off that prediction, although Seattle's struggling, so that means I think the Patriots are still likely to come out of the AFC, but that's different than saying no one else has a shot. They're favorites, but they shouldn't be prohibitive favorites. If you look at Kansas City, if you look at Oakland, and the puncher's chance that Derek Carr gives that offense late in games. Look at last night's game. On the road, the Ravens had a chance in the fourth quarter, and if not for one inexplicably sluggish series, right, of downs where it was just slow moving and one blown coverage, maybe they win on the road against the Patriots. Now, it's a lot of ifs, I understand that, but they were very much in that game in the fourth quarter, and I don't look at Baltimore as world beaters. So, yes, the Patriots should be favored to come out of the AFC, as I predicted they would before the season started, but based on what I'm seeing right now and based on the quality of the other teams and the specific attributes of the other teams, Stephen A., you mentioned at Arrowhead how difficult the Chiefs are there. But again, the Raiders, even though I think it's a year too early, I think next year they might be Super Bowl favorites, depending on what they do to their defense in the offseason. But even right now, we have consistently seen the Raiders win games that they were really no better than the other team. But they have a special quarterback and an elite receiving core and late in games that makes them extremely dangerous.
Couple of things worth pointing out, Max. Number one, did you watch Brady yell at, I think it was Edelman last night when he ran the wrong route and what have you? I mean, this is accountability. This is leadership. This is what you would have liked to have seen from Dak when it came to Dez running those routes that he was running the other day. Let me be clear. The other point that I wanted to point out about Brady is this. Look, against an Eli Manning and against a Ray Lewis, I think Eli Manning is like a 1-6 or 1-7 in the postseason against those guys. Here's my issue. Where's that Ray Lewis? I understand that Eli Manning might be there, Big Ben, or Derek Carr, for example, but where's that Ray Lewis to contend with? You know, I mean, I respect the hell out of Kansas City's defense, no doubt. Eric Berry Peters and the crew with Justin Houston, Tom Ali and those boys. But at the same time, they ain't what Ray Lewis was. They damn sure don't have that on Oakland outside of Khalil Mack. Now, you can sit up there and say Khalil Mack in terms of, you know, what he brings to the table as it pertains to getting to the quarterback. But when I think about Ray Lewis, Max, I'm thinking about the ultimate leader on the football field, the dude capable of galvanizing the troops. When I think about a Khalil Mack, I think about a poorer version of a Lawrence Taylor in terms of a guy that's so incredible. He goes out there and he performs individually. When I think about Ray Lewis, I think about the individual that galvanizes the troops and elevates everybody's game around him to bring out that massive performance and effort from them. I don't see anyone in the AFC that's capable of doing that on the defensive side of the ball. And as a result, how you going to neutralize Tom Brady?
Well,
you can't win without neutralizing Tom Brady against the Patriots.
I like the Ray Lewis point. Ray Lewis is, you know, one of the greatest players ever, and you want to neutralize one of the greatest players ever, Tom Brady, on the other side. Maybe it's good to have one of the greatest players ever on defense on your side, particularly when that player is a leader of the defense the way Tom Brady is a leader of the offense. I'll point out, though, that against John Elway and the Broncos, since you brought up Lawrence Taylor, who was not the same kind of leader that Ray Lewis was,
right?
They still beat the Broncos, and LT was the best, player in football that year.
Listen, wait a minute now. There was the Harry Carsons of the world, callbacks and others on the squad with them now.
No doubt about it. I'm talking about the impact that a special player can have on defense. And I look at Oakland. Is Oakland going to struggle defensively if they have to play the Patriots? Of course. The Patriots know how to play offense, and Oakland's not very good defensively, although they're getting better. But is it possible that they have like a Weapon X? Sorry, Dawkins, on that, but they have a Weapon X on their side that can make some big plays when it matters most? Yeah, they do. They have maybe the most talented defender in the league in Khalil Mack.
Okay.
All I got to say is it must be nice to be a Boston sports fan. Unbelievable, that city.
They doing it up a little bit. I'm very concerned as a New Yorker.
Don't get no credit
Red Sox, the Red Sox, now the damn Patriots,